Welcome to the Creation Station. Today on Impromptu Review, we will be looking at Spider-Man No Way Home. Because who isn't looking at Spider-Man No Way Home? Okay, so we won't have any spoilers at first, but we will later on, and I will let you know. So, it's a great movie. What more do you need to know? Go watch it. Well, no, it's a little bit more than that. I mean, it was a great movie, true. But if you've seen the trailers, which if you haven't, then yes, just go at least watch some trailers first, because they show that villains from the other Spider-Man movies show up. And that was amazing. Everything was the way they dealt with them, and I mean dealt with them. They felt just like the original from the movies. They were written really well, acted definitely well. They had the same actors, so that helped for sure. But they kind of like gave them closure in some of their stories and stuff, and sort of, but they dealt with them really well, and like the interactions between them and everything else, because some of them knew each other, some of them didn't, but they knew each other, and they interacted well. Even the ones that didn't, it was kind of fun to watch interact, and it was written really well overall. Now, the movie is really good and enjoyable to watch, but it's definitely not perfect. And I will get into that more in the spoilers, so if you haven't watched the movie, you're gonna have to be out of that discussion, or stick around for it anyways if you have no interest in watching it. But movie is really good. A lot happens in the movie, and it definitely has rewatch value, because like there's so much that happens. You blink, you might miss something, and both things that they show and say, you know, it's like you get done with the movie, it's like it's a lot to take in, which is why it's worth watching it more than once. The storytelling, just the overall story was really good. I mean, you think it'd be kind of, you know, oh, it's gonna be pandering. We're just adding these villains for nostalgia's sake, you know, using it to drum up the, you know, attention and stuff, which it definitely did that, but the story that was wrapped around it was really well. It makes sense, and although we have all these villains that aren't this universe's, this Spider-Man's villains, it ends up being related to him. The story still comes back to him. Yeah. The story is really well. Gonna have to move into spoilers now. There's a lot to say in the spoilers. Or a lot to say, period. And some of that can be spoiled. So, if you haven't seen it, goodbye for now. But please come back and enjoy the rest of the video after you've seen it. I do recommend watching it, and watch it more than once. It's great. You'll get probably just as entertained the second time around. Okay, so once again, spoilers coming up. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go! Alright, so there's a lot to talk about here. Yes, the other Spider-Man show up. Big surprise. not really. Makes sense. If you're going to bring the villains, why aren't you bringing the Spider-Man as well? He's going to need help tangling them anyways. That's a lot of villains. Although, I guess the trailers didn't show everything, or they kind of did tease them. But, yes, all three Spider-Man show up, and that was great. Now, what they did with them, well, for starters, a lot of people have been saying that the MCU Spider-Man here is missing a lot of the original spirit of Spider-Man. And mostly the stuff that happens with in his origin story, which they don't really cover his origin story, but it's obviously not there because this is not the same character. You know, him dealing the original origin story of, you know, him messing up and inadvertently getting his Uncle Ben killed and stuff like that, and the whole with power comes responsibility line. And as corny as that can be, it is important to him and his character. Now, a lot of people haven't liked the MCU because of all that, the Spider-Man from the MCU. I didn't mind it. I thought, okay, this is a different take. This is interesting. He's quite the dumb, innocent kid. He's like, it kind of makes sense where they were going, but yes, he's lacking in his character because this is missing. And this story brings it back, as you will find out if you hadn't seen it. I would hope you had by now, because I'm spoiling it. So all of the other two Spider-Men show up, so there's three. And the two ones help him deal with what happens with, as you know, Aunt May's death. Not Uncle Ben. But basically, it's the same premise, you know. She dies, you know, she before she dies, she tells him, you know, don't listen to what they say. You have a great power, and you need to, you know, responsibility is part of what happens when you get great power. So, but, you know, he's miserable, and he's ready to go hunt down the Goblin and kill him and whatnot. And the other two help him get through that, along with his friends, which is very much what happened in Into the Spider-Verse. And that was good, and so is this. But this was better because this didn't just do that. We also dealt with these Spider-Mans and some of their issues from their past. The Tobey Maguire one, you know, he always regretted the deaths of the villains that he had fought. You know, like Osborn, obviously, considering his son was his best friend. And that actually led to his best friend's death, kind of, too. But you know, he regretted not saving Osborn, which is, they deal with that with this one. And also Garfield's Spider-Man, you know, his girlfriend Gwen Stacy died. He was not able to save her, and they dealt with that in here as well. And that's what made the movie even better, because it wasn't just focused on our MCU Spider-Man. and his growth, although that was the main focus, but you dealt with the other characters as well. And that includes the villains, because they got quite a bit of development and stuff going on. And probably one of the sympathetic villains, like, gets redeemed. Dr. Octopus, because, you know, like, you watch the original Spider-Man 2, and it's sad. It's very sad, and Sam Raimi's villains were always... That's right. Oh, God, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man was usually so great. Most of the villains were sympathetic one way or the other. Now, Osborn was probably the least, but he was still sympathetic. You could sympathize with him to some extent. The whole double facing, the evil side or whatever, that's always been part of Osborn. It just, the chemicals brought it out more, you know, like removed any restraint. So the point. But Dr. Octopus is like, his wife died, and then he put these chips in, he put the chip in, you know, the control module and the things for the claws, and that gets busted in the same accident. And that's all it controlling him and making him do things, you know. And he was, before that, this really nice, smart, intelligent professor. And we get that back with this one, which is great. Of course, even in Spider-Man 2, at the very end, he realized what he was doing wrong and essentially dragged his own project down into the water with him, sacrificing himself to save the city from himself. So he kind of got redeemed in that movie himself, but he also didn't really deserve his fate either in that. And so it was kind of great seeing this happen in this movie. Now, how all this plays out going forward, I don't know. It's like they go back, but did they change the timeline? What does it? Probably not. Who knows? I don't know. This is kind of strange questions. Strange, interesting questions, because if you consider a lot of the other things happening in the MCU right now, like the Loki series, the TVA, I mean, wouldn't these villains all become variants now? Or maybe they're allowed to be, what happened to them happens to them because of the events that happened in Loki. I mean, we don't even know, because we haven't really got the final what happened in Loki. They left us hanging. So there's a lot to unpack about, and a lot of unknowns still. But it was great seeing the Spider-Mans interact with each other. They had great dialogue. Oh, I've heard complaints that they chatted too much, but that was still great. I mean, for the pacing of the movie, maybe it slowed it down a little bit, but the movie was fast anyways. It was nice taking a little bit of a breather. But yeah, they acted, you know, just like brothers or something. It was pretty good, and the way it ended, well, the the very ending, I have kind of issues with, and it's a bittersweet ending. But if you're a Spider-Man fan and you've seen other Spider-Man stuff, you know this stuff happens. It has not happened yet in the MCU, because we don't get the MCU Spider-Man, I should say. You know, it's, oh, everything's going to be okay, and everything turns out fine, and everything goes back to normal. Well, the name of this movie is No Way Home. It's exactly what happens. It's like the other ones, Homecoming, Far From Home. We could go back to home. We could go back to normalcy to some extent. This one, no. But in that, I still have a bit of problem. Alright, I didn't talk about Doctor Strange in all this. But yes, he's kind of the cause of all this, although also Spider-Man. But he's trying to help Spider-Man because at the end of the last movie, it gets revealed that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And basically, Peter Parker wants him to cast a spell that everybody forgets that he's Spider-Man. Okay, so everybody forgets that he's Spider-Man. That's fine. But by the end of the movie, we get... It seems like the spell has changed. Well, first, the spell goes awry because Spider-Man's like, wait a minute, I don't want everybody to forget. I want, people like you, Doctor Strange, to remember. I want my friends to remember, Aunt May to remember, the Happy to remember, and it ends up botching up Doctor Strange's spell, and the spell ends up bringing everybody who knows he's Peter Parker to them. Now, I was thinking about this. I mean, it could be possible this is what botched it up. Is like, why would you bring people from alternate dimensions into ours? That's a very powerful spell. So, and if that was the condition of the original spell, that means everybody would forget that Peter Parker's Spider-Man in all the universes. And like, that might have been part that, but that I could excuse that because that could have been partially like what got goofed up with the spell. Like, part of the spell may have been the address that our universe, everybody in our universe would forget that he's Spider-Man. Just saying, that's a very powerful spell that it made people forget from multiple universes. And it's like, I think that's a little overkill for that spell, Doctor Strange. What were you thinking? But the spell at the end is different. And basically, it makes... This is what I'm confused about, because they don't mention it or anything else, but the spell is supposed to make everybody who knows is Spider-Man forget he's Spider-Man, which is supposedly what the original spell was. But what happens is not what happens in that case, because it looks like at the end his whole existence gets erased from what we see at the end. The biggest point was Ned has completely forgotten him. Why? Ned was his friend before he knew he was Spider-Man. Maybe we don't see it because we don't see the origin, but maybe his friend before he even was Spider-Man, before he got bitten by the radioactive spider. So, why did they do this? And it wasn't necessary to fix things. If they used the original spell and just made everybody forget that he is Spider-Man, they still Peter Parker. Peter Parker still exists, and so does Spider-Man. They're just separate entities. Why do this? Now, I have a feeling that it was just set up for whatever they have planned for the MCU next. And that's fine. But they could have had some better explanation why they did it. Like, narratively. Say something. Oh, we have to do the spell this way because, I don't know. They could make something up. But it wasn't distinctly said, and I was confused. I mean, before they even cast the spell, like, like, oh, and he's going to say goodbye to his friends. I'm like, Ned too. I'm like, but your guy, I don't get it. And even after the spell gets cast, it seems like he doesn't own anything. He's like moving into this one room, low rent shack. I mean, I don't know. It's like Peter Parker doesn't exist at all. But yeah, I believe it was done on purpose to set up whatever they have planned next. But that being said, what are they going to do next? Because, I mean, are they just going to have Spider-Man show up different places? Like, like he'll show up and help the Avengers out here or there or something else? Yes, they won't know who he is because they won't remember that he's Peter Parker. But, because part of the story of Spider-Man is him trying to balance life between being a superhero and everyday, normal, real life. But they've completely kind of erased his normal, real life, so what more is there? I mean, yeah, I guess he could, people meet new people all the time, and he's kind of starting anew, so I guess that's probably what they'd end up doing, is having him meet new people and go from there. Yeah, so I don't know what they have planned going forward, but that whole ending had me very confused, and what's confusing is the writing in this movie was so good to leave such a big empty question mark and leave me confused, because the writing was so well done. Now, yes, I'm complaining about this, but I still loved the movie. It was, like I said, really great. And, I mean, maybe there's something I missed. I've only watched it once. And it's like, I feel like I missed something, because I don't understand why things changed with the spell at the end. So I recommend you go watch the movie if you haven't, and if you haven't, I don't know why you're still here. But those have seen it, maybe you could let me know down in the comments what I missed, apparently. Or if you agree with me, that's a bit odd and strange. Doctor Strange. Anyways, so yeah, I'm excited for whatever they got coming next, and the teaser and stuff. I like the little stint there with Venom. That was interesting. I mean, you got to pay attention to the dialogue at the end of the Venom movie, very close to the dialogue, to understand what exactly happened. Because, and if you hadn't, I'll explain here. So, the very end of the Venom movie, the symbiote says to Eddie, he's like, we have great knowledge of I have so much knowledge and stuff from being part of a hive mind, and which one could debate whether they're actually a hive mind. That was never mentioned originally, but that's not the point. That's what they're going with, and we find out the spell brings people to the world who know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. That means that the Venom symbiote knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, even though he's not from that universe. Which implies that somehow through the hive mind might even exist across multiple dimensions, so that the symbiote that was in Spider-Man 3 from Tobey Maguire knew that he was Peter Parker. Therefore, that's why this Venom got sucked into their world. Even though they didn't know him personally or have never dealt with him personally. And that's kind of funny and cool. And then immediately get sent back. Now, why the little thing they got left over didn't get sent back? Yeah, that kind of breaks the rules, but it's probably how they're going to potentially bring Venom into the MCU. But that leaves the other Venom from those two movies as a separate thing, so they don't have to. They could create their own Venom in their MCU, which that Spider-Man might have to deal with. That leaves some interesting things. But yeah, that's that for that little. Well, it wasn't really a teaser. Just a. I don't know. Well, yeah, I guess it is a teaser for potentially Venom coming to the MCU in some aspect. And if you haven't seen my thoughts on Venom, I'll leave a link. Have a link here on the screen. I'm thinking about things I want to say with that, but we don't need to talk about that right now. Then the last teaser, like, this was not a normal Marvel teaser. That pretty much was a trailer, but it definitely shows how things are starting to come together from WandaVision and stuff moving into what's going on. Not too much with Loki. Although said Loki's not done with it yet, but it was an exciting trailer. I just was shocked at the way it was done. I usually get trailers at the end of movies, usually get them at the beginning of movies, but still, that was good. And I am looking forward to the Doctor Strange movie. I don't know how much free reign they're going to have in making it, but the director is Sam Raimi, and he hasn't done a Marvel movie since the Spider-Man movies for certain reasons, although I feel bad for him because those movies were wonderful, and this movie actually shows how good a movie they were. Like I said, with the villains, even when you see the villains compared to the other villains from the other series, his villains were great. His Spider-Man was good. The third movie flopped. Well, flopped relatively speaking. It wasn't the greatest, but that was not his fault, as I also talk about in my Sonic the Hedgehog video, which I'll leave another link up to that. That's it for me here at the Creation Station. So, if you liked this video, please like and share with others. Subscribe if you haven't yet, and also hit the little bell down there at the bottom. It'll give you notifications when I have new videos up. Or you could also follow me on follow the channel on Facebook and on Twitter. The links should be down in the description. And please leave comments down below. Let's talk about this movie and others. I mean, there's a lot to talk about because, I mean, you have 5 other movies that are connected to this. Well, more so with the Venom ones as well. So there's quite a few movies that are connected to this movie. And so there's a lot to talk about. So let's talk. Alright, down below in the comments. Anyways, so remember, creativity is key.